I don't care one bit about the war in Ukraine. I don't think that's not where my focus is. My focus is on the U.S. economy, which is related to the extinction theory. If the U.S. economy falls apart, it's the end of the world. Okay? That's what I'm going to propose to anyone who will listen. We cannot let the United States fall. It's too big to fail. The empire is too big at this point. And the way I see it, they had to expand into Europe without firing a shot, letting the Russians do all the work over there. And all they had to do was enter Europe and conquer Europe. So I think, yeah, there is right now a takeover of Europe, and maybe there is going to be a deindustrialization of Europe. I think the United States will have more influence, already has, but will have even more influence as time goes by, both militarily and economically. So we'll see what happens. Right now, I don't care as long as the United States empire doesn't fall apart. I think that's the one we have to preserve. Okay, talking about extinction, the possibility of extinction, one fellow says you aren't making any predictions about when exactly extinction will take place. So nothing that is currently going on is necessarily an indicator of collapse. What's going on is the conquest of Europe. That's what's going on as far as I'm concerned. That's the important thing that's going on right now. And we'll see where that leads. If the American economy can survive by taking over Europe, let's do it. I don't, I don't care. Countries and empires have changed throughout history, so that's not going to blow me away at least. I think this examination makes sense from a point of view of a case study, seeing things happening in the media and speculating how this fits in with a potential or even hypothetical overall collapse scenario as outlined in your theory. Personally, I am optimistic about our chances, so for me it is like a thought experiment. Well, all I can tell you is that from my point of view, I don't, first of all, I want to say that I'm not pessimistic or optimistic or anything like that. I call it realistic. Okay, it's a theory. I'm saying we're going to apply the theory of extinction, the mass extinction that occurred to animals in the past, and I am applying that theory to us humans. I'm saying we cannot avoid the same mechanism. And so this is a question of an objective issue. It's not a question of whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic. It's just realistic. And the way I see it, right now the big problem is that the global economy is in big problems. It's in big problems because it's not expanding as well as it should. We had the COVID, now we have this war and other wars going around the planet. And the problem right now is that I don't think we have too much more to go as far as growth on planet Earth, economic growth. And if there is no economic growth, if economic growth comes to a standstill, like definitely, like permanently, we're all in trouble. Okay, all economies need to expand. The human economy is an inverted pyramid scheme. We have to have more sales, more growth year after year after year after year, at least long term. If we reach a plateau and we have no perspectives, no projections further up ahead going, expanding, if the projections are also that we're coming down, it's the end of man. Okay, the global economy cannot go down. It has to continue growing and growing and growing, and it cannot grow forever. So yeah, it's not a question of being pessimistic or optimistic. It's a question of being realistic and just following the theory to the letter, to every word that's in there. Okay, another fellow, he makes a comment on extinction. He says, did you identify the mechanism for extinction of plants as old age? What is old about a baby dinosaur? Well, this poor fellow, I mean, Jesus. And he says the genes the mechanism for extinction? The older a species, the more susceptible to disease, predation, or what? How did I miss your physical mechanism in nature that explains the Cretaceous tertiary extinctions? I am as ignorant at the end of your videos when your video started. Well, I'm really sorry that this fellow didn't have the intelligence to understand the theory of extinction. Maybe he didn't listen to the theories. Maybe I don't know if I explained it in any detail last time, so maybe that's what he was waiting for. The issue is that, yeah, baby dinosaurs have nothing to do with the age of a species, but I guess that went from one ear through the other with nothing to stop it in between, just space-time. So here, let me just point these things out, see if we can zero in on what the mechanism is. First, I start by saying that we should study Extinction 101 before we do Extinction 102. 101 is the animals in the past. 102 is human extinction. Okay, so I like to make a separation between those two. We must first learn the mechanism of extinction before we apply it to man. Okay, and the first thing we have to note is that Extinction 102, the extinction of man, is not a prediction. And a lot of people have trouble with that, understanding that. No, it's an explanation. What we're explaining is a mechanism, okay? And the mechanism is economics, and all animals had and have economics. They manage food. Management of resources is economic. And every animal, including us, we all manage food, okay? We're saying that mass extinction is the disappearance of a food chain, therefore it's related to food. And the Extinction 101 explains the mass extinction, okay? So you have to take Extinction 101 first before we can get to something else. Now this fellow did question Extinction 101, but the problem is he knows very little if he's gonna say that a tiny dinosaur, a baby dinosaur, is not an old species, okay? So I guess his logic fails right there, okay? But here it is. Let's go in little steps, little baby steps for people who are hard of understanding. Okay, we're not trying to convince people. We're trying to make people understand what the theory is. Okay, so stay tuned to the or tune into the theory, not to believe or prove or anything like that. Okay, so here it goes. There were different ages, okay, throughout the history of life on Earth. And here you have the gymnosperms. They were the flora, the primary flora of the age of the dinosaurs. And the dinosaurs preceded the mammals. That's why the dinosaurs were an older species than the mammals, just like the synapsids were an older species than the dinosaurs, and the amphibians were an older generic species, right? Family or whatever, than the synapsids. Okay, and for each age you had a different type of food, different type of vegetation. So what happens when the vegetation goes away, which as you can see it did, okay? Well, you would think that when some of that vegetation goes away, the one that the animals got used to after millions of years, when it goes away, the animals also go away. And that's essentially the overall theory, okay? When the plants die, the herbivores die, and the predators that preyed upon them die as well. That's essentially the theory, the big picture, okay? So there's a lot of details that people want to know, and we can't get to all the details here, but I just want people to understand the big picture. Big picture is plants and animals go together. Certain animals are born and grow and radiate with a certain type of plants. Millions of years later, many dynasties of plants and animals later, at some point the type of plant disappears, gradually disappears, is taken over by another plant, which the animals, ruling dynasties, do not eat, can't eat, okay? Mammals, we don't eat ferns. Mammals, we do not eat conifers, gymnosperms, okay? We eat angiosperms, okay? So if tomorrow all the ferns and all the conifers on planet Earth die, we won't miss a thing. They're just there for beauty, okay? To cover the landscape, that's it. We have primarily angiosperms on planet Earth. I think 90% of the flora is angiosperms, are angiosperms, okay? So what happened? How did the dinosaurs die? Well, they ate conifers. They ate cycads, cycadioids, and ginkgos. So they had all these plants and probably a lot of taller conifers, and this was the vegetation that they grew up with. If you look at their expansion, the expansion of dinosaurs, it was with conifers. The ferns were dying, and so were the mammal-like reptiles, and afterwards the archosaurs. And what grew after that, what radiated, were the conifers together with the dinosaurs. And guess what happened millions of years later, several or thousands of dynasties later? Well, when their plant world was dying, conifers were dying, the angiosperms were taking over the land, muscling them aside, okay, kind of. They were muscling them aside because the conifers had already completed their cycle of life. They developed as much as they could. Not only did their genetic diversity disappear, but they were archaic plants compared to the vibrant new angiosperms that were spreading everywhere. So a lot of the forests and jungles of conifers were being replaced by the angiosperms. Not because really the angiosperms weren't really muscling them aside, even though that's a term that I use. What was happening, the conifers were not reproducing and spreading as they were when they radiated millions of years earlier. And so the dinosaurs, they were caught in these, what I call shrinking islands, shrinking forests and shrinking jungles. And they were caught with less and less food at the time that they were really expanding in numbers because they had beaten or gotten used to many of the diseases after millions of years as well. You know, they were more or less sedentary animals by then. You know, I'm saying that what happens is animals migrate, and at some point, you know, they reach a certain location and they become more sedentary. The more sedentary, the more they get used to diseases that used to kill their ancestors. And at some point, you know, they live longer, they have longer lives, they can expand in numbers, but the jungles are shrinking under their feet. Okay, so that's in general the process. Okay, and here you see evidence for those who look for evidence. There was a 4-year study known as the Cretaceous Terrestrial Revolution. Okay, this is related to the dinosaurs specifically. Okay, and here it is. You can see what happened throughout the Cretaceous. While the angiosperms were expanding, not only in number of species, but they were also expanding in volume on Earth. The cycads, the ferns, in general, all the conifers and ferns, they were dying. In other words, they were going away. Okay? And it was the angiosperms that were taking over the land. And so who do you think eats angiosperms? What was the mammals? So the mammals radiated, the little tiny mammals that were at the feet of the dinosaurs were radiating with the angiosperms that were covering the land. And meanwhile, the big guys, the ruling dynasties, they were dying because they were old as well as species. So were the plants that they ate. And it all came to a head over there about 65 million years ago. So this is also, I think, reinforces the theory, okay, what we find in the record, okay. And so it's very important to see this, okay, when animals were born. Okay, when different types of animals were born. Why were the dinosaurs an older species than the mammals? Well, they were older because they started a lot earlier than us. They started with when the conifers radiated. There were no angiosperms on planet Earth at the time, so mammals could not have developed because mammals developed with the angiosperms. Okay, and here you see the map. You can see that the dinosaurs preceded the mammals that start over there at Purgatorius and even a little earlier there. But they started around the end of the Triassic, beginning of the Jurassic. That's when mammals began. Okay, that's when they developed. That's as far back as we can trace them. On the other hand, you can see what happened with the dinosaurs. They preceded us, and they were the ones who radiated with the conifers. Okay, so in general, that's the theory. The theory is that plants disappeared, the animals that forged a long-term relationship with them disappear with them. And that's what's going to happen to us. Our plant life is going to disappear because we produce it. No money, no food.